All right, so we've been kind of talking about this move to Jerusalem. Jesus gets to Jerusalem, triumphal entry, and then he kind of starts giving it to them, right? Like the time has come, so he's not holding anything back. And particularly in chapter 23, we get this kind of great sermon of him chastising the Pharisees. Woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites, right? We talked about some of that, and he preaches pretty difficult. And it ends with this kind of mournful lament in 37 through 39 about how much he wishes to just take care of them, right? Gather them around like with under his wings, like chicks, protect them. And they wouldn't let him. And so destruction's going to come. And so he gives this kind of speech. He leaves the temple, chapter 24, and it says in verse 1, Jesus left the temple and was going away when his disciples came to point out to him the buildings of the temple. But he answered them, you see all these things, do you not? Truly I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. So the first question, why are they showing him the temple? Like, what are they thinking? What's the idea? What do you all know about the temple at this time? Any thoughts? Ray has a lot of thoughts, I think, can tell. So let's back up. And we're going to spend a good bit of time on this and maybe not get to go through all the details of chapter 24 because of this. But I think the context matters here quite a bit. And I think that it allows us to kind of take the right lessons from this by backing up some. So if we go back to the Old Testament, all the way back, right? And Jesus makes promises to Abraham. They go into captivity. There's the Exodus. They're brought out of captivity. And he promises to establish them as a nation, right? And he gives them the law in Sinai. And he gives them all these commandments. And in Exodus, actually, one of the largest sections of Exodus or of the law is about the details of building the tabernacle. Like the specific dimensions, the materials, all these things, the tabernacle, right? And they build the tabernacle because that's where God's going to live. And in fact, when they finish it, there's this great scene where God's glory comes at the end of Exodus and fills the tabernacle. God's there, right? So God made a promise to them that they will be his people. He will be their God. And he lives there in the tabernacle. His glory fills it, this cloud, this presence, and he's there. And he's there all the way until the Temple of Solomon. And Solomon dedicates the temple, and God's glory goes from the tabernacle to the temple, and he's there with the people. And this is the moment in which the Israelites think they've made it, right? Because this is a permanent dwelling. God is living in a house. He's not a tent. We're not traveling around. We are a nation, and God is with us, right? And because of that, it gave them a certain sense of comfortability with God, with his presence. Well, God's not going to abandon his house, is he? He's not going to allow his house to, have these things happen to it. So they just assume God's there because they have the temple. So even though they have all these other idols and do all these other things, even all the way at the end of the Old Testament, right? When God judges them and says he's going to punish them, they're like, yeah, but we have the temple, right? Like we've got God, we got the Ark of the Covenant, we have God. So like he'll save us because he's not going to allow his temple to be destroyed. And Ezekiel says, no, in fact, God's no longer in the temple. And he has this vision of God's glory coming up out of the temple and leaving. And he's gone. He abandoned them. And then Jerusalem's destroyed and they're gone. And you're like, well, that's it. It's all over. But also within the prophets, there's a message, isn't there? God will come back. Ezekiel 45 shows an image of God's glory going back and refilling the temple. Haggai 2, he talks about the glory of the latter temple will be greater than the former. And remember, Haggai's prophesying while they're rebuilding the temple. But despite all these prophecies and all these things, God's glory never comes back into the temple in the Old Testament. And you could look at it and say, well, this temple that's being built is nothing compared to the Temple of Solomon. Like they were just, former slaves that have wandered back to their land and are hobbling together a building from the rocks they can find on the ground. Like this isn't going to be like the Temple of Solomon that was covered in gold. Well, fast forward to the time of Jesus, and Herod was a great builder, and he said, I'm going to rebuild basically the Temple of Solomon, but even greater. And so he had been spending decades building this temple, and it is the most beautiful thing in the world, right? Josephus talks about how incredible this is. I mean, think about like a building that you've been in that's just incredible. I've been in some Catholic churches that are just, the stained glass, it's beautiful, You go to Italy and you see the cathedrals or whatever, like the Duomo in Florence or something, right? Like we approach these buildings and we're just awestruck at how incredible they are. Or for us, maybe there's some sentimentality to going to Washington, D.C. and seeing the Washington Monument or the Lincoln Memorial, right? Like incredible statues and buildings that also mean something to us as Americans, right? Like something like that. That's what the temple is, right? Like this is their identity. And this is the glorious temple. And this is rebuilt in the type of Solomon's temple. And it's glorious and it's wonderful and it's beautiful. There's one thing missing though. And I'm pretty sure the Jews would have been abundantly aware that one thing is missing. And what's that? God, His glory filling the temple. And so Jesus has come and He says, I am, right? And He teaches and He heals and He fulfills prophecy and quotes prophecy. And there's the triumphal entry. And He's overthrowing the Pharisees and the Sadducees in the temple. And He chastises them. And so what are they saying, do you think? In Matthew chapter 24, verse 1. What are they implying when they point to this temple to Jesus? Yeah. It's time for God's glory to return. Because we have the prophecies, we have the images, we have the promises of Abraham, right? God is going to come back in the temple and the time is now. And they're looking and they're saying, see, Jesus, isn't this amazing? It isn't just about how beautiful it is. It's about God coming back and them being a nation again. Yeah, Rick. Yeah. Yeah, urging him, the time is now. You take the temple, right? So when we look at this, it's easy to say, oh, well, they just didn't get it, right? They were looking for a physical kingdom, and we've got a spiritual kingdom. And that's a oversimplification, maybe, but some truth to that. But I want you to understand the context here, right? They're not just saying this because they're vain and want to have a physical kingdom again. This is what the entire Old Testament is about, right? Like Abraham said, through you all the nations of the earth will be blessed. I mean, there's really one way to interpret that until Jesus comes, right? Like that's what that means. Like it's straightforward. Like this isn't vague language. When it talks about the glory of the latter temple will be greater than the former, right? And you have Ezekiel's image in 45 of God coming back in the temple. Like that's not vague, right? Like that is God coming back into the temple. Like this isn't like some sort of secret, tricky sort of thing. The difference is that God is saying something different. They just didn't understand it. And that's not their fault. Like they're not wrong for thinking this way. Anybody who was a good Bible student and had read prophecy would think about it this way. Which again, what is the whole point of Matthew? What do we emphasize from the beginning about this kingdom that Jesus is establishing? It's different. And it's different and it's strange even for us to think about sometimes, right? Like this is revolutionary. This is something completely new that hasn't been done in the history of the world before. A house not made with hands, right? A kingdom without territorial lines. A king that doesn't sit on an earthly throne the way that other kings have. A king that establishes his reign without the sword, right? Like this is different. And so them pointing to the temple and saying, Jesus, look, they're like, it's time. And this is the fulfillment of all the prophecies we've talked about. And he says immediately, you see it, don't you? There's not going to be one stone left on another. And from that moment on, and he goes and he gives this sermon, Mount of Olives here in verse 3, but he says that, and they were just, what are you talking about? Like this is everything, Jesus. This is our identity as a people. This is what it means to be a Jew. This is what God promised to Abraham. Like the time has come for restoration. This is Ezekiel and Haggai. This is everything. And he's like, this is going to be destroyed. So, any questions, thoughts? Yeah. Right. Because the implication is, and the reality is, the days of Israel as a nation and a people and a kingdom of God are over. And to seal it, they're going to kill the Messiah. So all the way back in the Old Testament, when Jerusalem is destroyed and they're sent into Babylonian captivity and all, line of the priest is cut off, temple destroyed, all that stuff, yeah, that's the end. But at the same time, they don't quite understand how much it's the end. But when they kill Jesus, there's consequences. You don't kill the Son of God without there being a consequence. Even if that consequence partially covers your sins, if you're willing to repent, that doesn't mean that there's not consequences. And it's the Jews that kill him, not the Romans. Pilate may okay the punishment, but it is the Jews that are killing their Messiah, which is part of the how many times I've sent the prophets, you killed the prophets, right? All these things. This has failed. You have failed as a people. This covenant is null and void because you broke it. And what's remarkable is that God doesn't wash his hands of the world in that moment. He reaches out to everybody and changes the covenant, right? In a way that is pretty unbelievable. So anyway, so his comment here about the stones not being left on another, that's shocking and it's surprising and it doesn't make sense, but it's all part of what this chapter is about, which is the nation of Israel is no more the way that it was. It's not going to continue. But as we're going to go through, and we'll read a bunch of this, there's kind of two things that he talks about, and this is where Matthew 24 gets tricky, right? Is Jesus is talking about two different things. He talks very specifically about the destruction of Jerusalem, but he also talks about the end times and destruction of the world, Son of Man returning, all that sort of stuff. And so the difficulty is, as you go through Matthew 24, is trying to parse out which is which. I don't know that we necessarily have to know exactly which verses apply to which, because he's not specifically trying to guide us to understand when the end of the world is. He gives them some notification about the destruction of Jerusalem, but really the point isn't even about the when. It's about the understanding of the why. And specifically, it's about knowing that God is sovereign. So if you are a Jew, right, and you have the temple and you have all these things that you've believed in that are a part of your identity, you have all these prophecies, and the temple gets destroyed again, what's your thought going to be? And part of it, rightly so, God's rejected me again, right? This is over. The temple's destroyed. Or maybe God isn't as powerful as I thought he was, right? God doesn't have as much control as I thought he did. And so, because of that, Jesus has to tell them and make sure they understand, no, God is in control. He is sovereign. And when Jerusalem is destroyed, the temple is destroyed again, that's because God has willed it. And by the way, when bad things happen in the world and destruction occurs, it's because God is sovereign. And so chapter 24, we get caught in these theological arguments, some of which are interesting and valuable. But the danger is that we get so locked into understanding the theology and debating with other people about what things specifically mean, we lose the heart of the message, which is God is in control, so take comfort. Remain faithful despite the difficulties that occur, which is, again, the primary message of Revelation, right? God is in control, take heart, take comfort. And he shows that, and he demonstrates that. And that's really what this is about. It's preparing them and thereby also preparing us. There's this telescoping effect, right, of now and later sort of thing. Now but not yet, kind of nature of the kingdom sort of stuff. He's talking about things that will happen, but also things that will happen, like much farther down the line. All of that is to help declare God's sovereignty so that we can take heart and courage from that. So keep that stuff in mind as we go through this. So verse 3, he sat on the Mount of Olives, Matthew chapter 24, verse 3, and the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" And Jesus answered them, "See that no one leads you astray. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are but the beginning of the birth pains. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come." So, back up. Other than trying to diagnose and pinpoint specific interpretation of when this will occur, what's the takeaway? What's he telling them? What does he want them to understand? Yeah, and he'll specifically talk about that later too, that it's not time for you to know when this will occur. Rather, what should they do? Trust, endure, remain faithful, right? And this is, this talks about big stuff. Nations fighting against nations and famines and earthquakes, like the big things that you see, that we still see, right? But it follows all the way through to any of the suffering that exists in the world, right? Like the lesson is still the same. Like these things happen because, and he kind of alludes to this in there a little bit, many will fall away, betray one another, hate one another. Lawlessness will be increased. The love of many will grow cold. It isn't that God's making those things happen. That's the way that people are. And you see it, don't you? The love of many growing cold. People betraying one another. It's the way that things occur. It's the nature of the world. And so this context of destruction and all these things is couched within the failures of human nature without God. And so the lesson is, don't let anyone lead you astray. You remain faithful. You remain strong. You remain confident. You trust, because God is in control. Which is important, isn't it? Have you ever had something bad happen and been like, man, why? Lose a job, get sick, have some injury that you can't recover from, something bad happen to a relative, see a disaster in the world, right? This is one of the things that a lot of people use to argue against God's existence, isn't it? Well, if God was so good, then how would this happen, right? How would this occur if God was good and in control? Why would he allow it to happen? And Jesus says, don't allow those things to cause you to question. God is in control. He is sovereign. But notice that people will betray, that they will grow cold in their hearts and all these things. And despite of this, the gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world. The kingdom will grow despite these things. Yeah.
We know all this is going to start. And he's telling them how to live through it. So he doesn't really answer the question in a way. This is, there's something I need you to understand. There's something I need you to know. And you're in the wrong place already. So let me drag you over here. You need to be faithful. That's the most telling him, I'm the Christ and you got to follow me. He doesn't tell them all about heaven. He doesn't tell them about the sovereignty of God. He doesn't go through a lot of things here. In this crucial moment when they're asking questions of him, he says, don't be misled. Like it's the most important thing I need you to get. And I find that very clear.
Yeah. And because you have this context, right, of the problems, the things that occur, the being led astray, all this stuff, and the battle cry is remain faithful. And the reason why that's his ultimate push for them is that if God tried to list out every circumstance of every bad thing that would happen so that you would know and be prepared, I mean, you could fill up how many pages just of your life, right? Like if somebody was going to write down your life and the bad things that have happened to you, because small things can hurt just as much as big things. But that's not the point, right? Not to handle every particular problem. The point is to say this is the character that you should have. This is the way that you should be, and that is much more powerful than the specifics of the circumstance and when it will occur. Don't be deceived. You have seen me. You have spoken to me. You have heard the words that I say. Trust in me, right? And if you trust in me and you come and you listen to all these things and you trust and are faithful, that's what matters. And then the end time stuff doesn't matter as much as when it will occur. Yeah, there will be wars and desolations and problems, and he's going to go into more. As long as you remain faithful, that's the key here. Is there another hand? Yeah.
I was just going to say, there are references in the text to time and when. And when you see this, and then this will happen, or this will occur, but these are just the birth pangs. The end is not yet. So he is giving them some detail about something that they can visualize and see, and they'll know something about it. And so that is something in the text we have to grapple with and understand. It's there.
Yeah.
And because of the difficulties with this chapter and Mark 13 and Luke 21, these are parallel passages. It's good to kind of look at all of them sometimes. But I do think that there is a transition, and you'll get to this, I'm sure, probably later in the middle part of the chapter. But there are things that we have to recognize. Because when we have into conversations with our religious friends that believe in the millennium or premillennialism and this kind of thing, they'll go to this chapter.
Right, for sure. And to Ray's point, some of these specific things, he gets into that even in the next verse, verse 15. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down to take what is in the house. And let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. And alas, for women who are pregnant and for those who are nursing infants in those days. Pray that your flight may not be in winter or on a Sabbath, for then there will be great tribulation, such as not been from the beginning of the world until now, no, and never will be. And if those days had not been cut short, no human would have been saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. So we'll pick up there in a second. I mean, he's giving a specific event, right? The abomination of desolation. What is that? Sorry? Yeah, but there's a specific act that's done as a sign of that, yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. That's part of this, right? The destruction coming because they perceive some sort of rebellion, so the Romans come. But the abomination of desolation, my understanding is that it's a very specific thing. It's the offering of unclean meat on the altar in Jerusalem at the temple, right? Like they are defiling the very altar in the temple. And so that's a very clear sign that they will come in, they will destroy, and they will defile the very temple and the very altar of God. I could be wrong about that. That's my understanding. So when that occurs, this abomination of desolation, this specific event, that's the sign. Like you better be gone by then. Like there's no more opportunity at this point when they come in and this sort of thing occurs. And so, yeah, there are very specific time event for them about the destruction of Jerusalem. Verse 24, for false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. See, I've told you beforehand. So if they say to you, look, he is in the wilderness, do not go out. If they say, look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and shines as far as the west, so will be the coming as the Son of Man. Wherever the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. So now he's kind of shifted a little bit, right? Coming of the Son of Man again, the false ones who are coming, who claim to be Jesus, all this sort of stuff. Like, this stuff occurred. Like, there's history of these people coming and pretending to be Jesus and different revolutionaries and all this stuff. And he's saying, don't fall for that. Because when the Son of Man comes, basically you'll know, right? It's like the lightning coming from the east to the west, shines as far as the west. You'll see it coming. Like, you will know when that occurs. And so he's kind of jumping back and forth, right? Destruction of Jerusalem, the signs of that, but also the end of times, and when the Son of Man comes ultimately as well. And I think the reason why you have both of those clumped together is because the lesson is the same in both, right? Like the application is the same. So I guess there's different ways that people talk about that with Old Testament prophecy, right? The immediate fulfillment, the future fulfillment, the ultimate fulfillment, right? So like one prophecy can be fulfilled multiple times. Like this prophecy from Jeremiah could be about the destruction of Jerusalem now, but it also kind of foreshadows the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70, and it also kind of foreshadows the end of times, right? Like, so some people say like unlimited fulfillment type stuff. All that gets complicated, right, depending on how particular you want to be about those terms. But the general idea is that these prophecies are fulfilled kind of multiple times in parallel. And so he clumps all this stuff together because the same sorts of things are going to occur and occur again. People talk about this all the time, don't they, with history, that it's like a pendulum or that it's like a wheel, that it spins and it's cyclical, it comes back, right? People talk about that with fashion, don't they? That like this thing that used to be popular is now popular again. It looked horrible, but now like this is the very thing that people want. There's like some funny examples of that, I guess. On the way to church, I saw a vehicle that had a bumper sticker that said something about like elder emo. It was never just a phase, right? Like still here, right? Like it never went anywhere. And it's like this kind of fashion idea, right? That like it went away and it came back, right? Music goes away and it comes back, becomes popular again. There was like an SNL skit years ago. I've never watched it, but I saw this skit about like mom jeans, right? And it was advertising mom jeans. And then I was shocked that those are like popular now. Like the thing that they were making fun of is now like the actual trendy thing, right? Like stuff comes in waves. Silly way to kind of articulate this principle, maybe, because this is obviously much more serious, but that's the idea, right? Like these things that have occurred will happen again. You've seen earthquakes and you've seen judgment and you've seen nations rise up against nation. You will continue to see those things. You will see the destruction of Jerusalem just like you saw it before. And you will see other cities be destroyed and conquered. And it's this idea of all these things happening and again, and God foreseeing all of that and the consequence being the same. And so that's why he transitions from the specifics of the destruction of Jerusalem to the end of times and when God will come. But also, the other reason why he does this is because they will claim that the Messiah has come again. And people will claim that Jesus has returned. And so he has to tell them, no. You will know when I return, right? You will know when this occurs. Don't believe the people that say that I've come back when I haven't, because you will see it, right? So there's a couple kind of reasons to maybe clarify why this language gets muddled together, so to speak, about the destruction of Jerusalem and future judgment and all those sorts of things. It makes sense? I was trying really hard with the fashion analogy, but I didn't get much reaction. I thought that was pretty funny, but maybe it was inappropriate. I don't know. Yeah, so the point of this is not, other than the specific application, like, you see this coming, the abomination of desolation, get off the rooftops, get out of the fields. Other than that particular sort of thing, which is a warning to his disciples that are listening to him, other than those sorts of immediate sort of specific applications, I don't think his point at all is so that we can pinpoint and diagnose anything from this. It's not so that we can look and interpret and say, oh, well, this was God's judgment here because of these other things, right? It's a mistake, and this is something that I heard. I don't know that I heard it at church, but you hear people make these arguments like Hurricane Katrina hitting New Orleans. Well, that's because New Orleans was a sinful city, and so they were being punished. It's like there's no way that you could argue that because the scriptures do not articulate that that's the way that these things are specifically occurring. And so I think, to Brother Caldwell's point, the point is not to use the idea of recurring fulfillment as a way to justify an interpretation of current events within the context of what Jesus is saying. That's not the idea. The point is rather to articulate God's sovereignty overall, right? That these things occur because God is sovereign. And don't lose heart when these things occur. Don't be afraid or scared when bad things happen. This is all part of the way that the world operates, and it all leads to, ultimately, God's control and redemption of salvation of mankind. I think that's the way to articulate that. Is that kind of in line with what you're warning against? Right. Cataclysmic? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, so certainly, and again, that goes back to this idea of some of this is applied specifically to their question and the destruction of Jerusalem, AD 70. Some of it does seem to be more foreshadowing. And so I think that the specifics don't necessarily have to run together that way, but the general idea, and my argument for the recurring prophecy as to why these two things run together within the chapter. Because some of this is clearly end time, some of it's clearly earlier, based on the language and the way that he addresses people. Like when he says you, right, he's talking to them. When he talks more broadly, it seems to be more broad. And so the reason why we articulate those two differences is because of Brother Caldwell's comment there, that we need to be careful that we're not trying to take the things that were relevant to them and apply them specifically to us. Although the general idea of destruction is there, it's not the same sort of application in the same way. So, yeah.
If we drop down just a little bit to verse 33 and 34, I think Matthew, a little better than Mark or Luke, shows a distinction between the destruction of Jerusalem, what we consider those events to be, and then the end of time. And when he says the destruction of Jerusalem, or when he's referring to that, he's showing signs that you can see. So verse 33 says, when you see all of these things, you know something. So it's something they can see and they know. Then he changes his focus on the end of the world when he comes back again. He says, nobody knows that. That's over in verse 36. But of that day and hour, no one knows. So in verse 33, he says, when you see these things, you know. And then in verse 36, but of that day and hour, no one knows. So he's talking about two different things here.
Yeah, well said. Right. Verse 29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will shake. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. This is the other reason why these things are kind of meshed together, right? We talked about the context at the beginning of the temple. And they see the temple, and they're showing Jesus the temple. This is fulfillment of prophecy. This is everything they believe. This is what the Bible has been pointing to in their minds from the beginning, promises of Abraham, right? The Messiah, it's going to be set right this time. And Jesus says, no, this temple is going to be destroyed. You've misunderstood the prophecy. Essentially, that's not what this is about. And so when all that occurs, and Jerusalem is destroyed, and the temple is destroyed, and they feel like they are lost once again without prophecy to guide them, like the way that they thought they should, then they are left wondering, well, was God ever really in control? What is actually happening here? And so Jesus fast forwards and says, no, God is in control, and there is going to be this other thing that occurs. There is going to be this redemption. There is going to be this fulfillment of these things, and he will come on the clouds and all this stuff. Just because this occurs and the destruction of Jerusalem occurs, don't let that shake your faith, because God is in control and Jesus is still in control. And so he has to fast forward to the end times to help establish that he is in control, despite what they're going to see as a destruction and a rejection of their way of life and who they were with the temple being destroyed. It's all part of this kind of elongating this message. Does it make sense? So then we get to 32. From the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also when you see all these things, you know that he is near, at the very gates. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. So there's a very specific kind of time frame, like Ray pointed out. It'll happen in this generation. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. Basically, you can bank on it, right? Like this is what's going to happen. But concerning that day and hour, no one knows. Not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. For as were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day when Noah entered the ark. And they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and one left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and one left. Therefore stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have left his house to be broken into. Therefore you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. This whole section, 36 to 44, is to say one thing. You don't know when the end is going to come. That's the point. And the analogies and the sorts of examples he gives there are to support that. Like the 2 women in the field and the one being taken, it's to demonstrate the point that no one knows, right? You'll both be working. You don't know when it's going to occur. Now, it's easy to take that outside of what Jesus intends and talk about other things. But generally speaking, the whole point is simply you don't know. I don't know. I know when this is going to happen. I don't know when this is going to happen, right? Verse 45, though. Who then is the faithful and wise servant whom his master has set over his household to give them their food at the proper time? Blessed is that servant whom the master will find so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. But if that wicked servant says to himself, my master is delayed, and begins to beat his fellow servants and eats and drinks with drunkards, the master of that servant will come in on a day when he does not expect him, and an hour he does not know, and will cut him in pieces and put him with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So, get a nice little pleasant image there to end the lesson here on the destruction of Jerusalem and all this sort of stuff. What's the takeaway? What does Jesus want them to know? Don't be distracted. Don't be led astray. Don't be fooled. Don't think he's not coming back, right? And why is that important? Because it seems obvious. But why is it important to so explicitly say, don't think that because he's delayed, he's not coming? It's been 2,000 years. It's been 2,000 years, he hasn't come back. What's the temptation? Yeah.
They were less patient than we might be because it was just years for them. And they were saying, well, he's not coming back. Peter mentions this. So
Yeah.
the fact is, this was to be anticipated. Now, I'm sure they would have thought, well, it could be 2,000 years from now. They probably would have said, there's no way. It's gonna
Right.
be like that.
Right.
And we might say, well, it could be around the corner because we're living in chaos. It could be another 2,000 years. We don't know.
Right.
So we just have to put our trust in God and in the meantime, continue to be faithful.
Yeah, I mean, all that's very well said. I mean, the reality is, it is easy to think it's been 2,000 years. Maybe it wasn't true. Maybe he was just some like wise guy who said a couple smart things, right? Like that's the temptation. That's what people say. That's what they argue. Well, like clearly Jesus existed, but I mean, was he actually the Son of God? You know, I mean, why would he allow these things to happen? Why hasn't he come back? Like there's no evidence now, right? And this is the lesson, right? He's delayed and you think, oh, maybe it wasn't true after all. Like that's the temptation that he's warning against. Yeah, Ed. Oh, over here. Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think that's well said. Were you going to say this? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. And it's like it's the hold fast idea, right? It's like the hardest thing in the world to like wait. Like, you know, we got Christmas coming around the corner and it's like kids can't take it. Like Joanna picked out a present for Megan and is so excited. She's like, I have to tell her, Dad. It's like, don't tell Mom. You're going to ruin the present. You're going to ruin the surprise. She's like, I have to. I can't keep it in. I have to tell her. It's like, no, don't tell her. And then she told Megan, I just have to tell you. She's like, no, don't tell me. Don't ruin the surprise, right? But for like a little girl, like both the wanting to have her presents and to give the presents, like it's too much. Too much, can't contain it, right? Like it's too exciting. And like that's the way we are as people, right? Whether it's like a present under a tree or like whatever it is, like we want it now. Like we want to be able to do this thing now. We don't want to have to like patiently wait and save our money so that we can retire 30 years from now. Like I want to buy a car today or whatever it is, right? Like I can just finance it. I can do this. I can do like we are very impatient people just in general. And so to wait and to hold fast is just fundamentally difficult. But how much more so when it is something like this? Like as a people, we've been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And we have all the things to tell us to wait and to hold fast, but some days it's harder than others, right? Some days you just say, Lord, why? Some days you say, Lord, are you there? Like that's the reality because we are waiting. And the message through all of this is destruction. These things will occur. You don't know when, but don't allow that to distract you from the faith that you need to have, which is hold fast. The faithful and wise servant, right? The one who is taking care of what they have every day. And there's a lot of wisdom in that too, right? Because if you're busy doing what you're supposed to do, you don't have as much time to worry about the things you can't control. I don't know that that's his primary point, but it might be a nice little positive side benefit there. But that's the idea, right? Hold fast, remain strong. God is in control. And we have all these other passages. Ray alluded to Peter, right? Days 1,000 years a day. Don't count. I'm slack concerning his promises. He's long-suffering. Hope that all should come to repentance, none shall perish, right? Like the whole idea, like there's a whole way to reason through and understand all that. But regardless of whether you understand all those ideas or not, just remain faithful. Don't give up because God is in control. Even when you see Jerusalem destroyed and the temple overthrown, and even when you see churches flooded or you see bad things happen in the world and nation rise against nation, just remain faithful. And take care of the things you need to take care of. Because the Son of Man will come. That's the primary heart of all this, right? So hopefully that's of some benefit. Hopefully you get the encouraging kind of heartening, hold fast kind of message from there. But I appreciate your attention and comments this morning. We'll get to chapter 25 next week.